Great. Welcome. Good morning to yet another little conversation we're going to have here today with regard to third-party marketing, but more importantly, with regard to distribution in regions around the world. We're joined today by David from Unicorn Capital Partners. Morning, David. How are you? I can see it's dark at your end of the world. What time of the day is it?
Hi, Stuart. Good morning. Yes, actually, today I'm in Miami. It is 6 a.m. in the morning, and as you said, it is still dark. Yes, outside.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this time of the morning, David. Appreciate your time. Could you just give me a brief introduction to Unicorn?
Okay, so Unicorn is a third party that has been focused in the distribution of loan-only mutual funds. So we launched a Unicorn late 2017 to, with the objective of representing a few asset managers from Europe that I knew them from my previous activity as headhunter. I was recruiter in my previous life, and I worked with very few asset managers that they were expanding the business in Latam. So I decided to change my activity as headhunter to a new one, and that's the reason because we launched Unicorn. And we started with Von Tobel with Jupiter. That is in late 2017. And we added another manager. So actually, we represent 6 managers for US offshore and Latam. So we are working with Banco New York Mellon, with Von Tobel, Mucinic, UBP, Calamos, and La Financiera Village here. We have offices in New York, Miami, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, Montevideo, and Santiago de Chile. And our focus are, all the different segments on the distribution for retail and institutional. So we work from the large global private banks as GP, Morgan, Citi Private Banking, Santander, to the independents, RIAs, family offices, multi and singles, and also with institutional business of the pension funds and the insurance companies. And yes, I think that, this is Unicorn. We are a team of a little bit more than, actually we're 20 people, and there are 2 people joining us in the following months. So yes, so that's
growing nicely, growing nicely. Now the US offshore market, LATAM, obviously people get LATAM to a certain extent, but the US offshore market is not one that many investors or fund managers rather, certainly over here in Europe, will understand. What do you see the challenges trying to promote into the US offshore market?
I think that the first thought that comes to me is compliance. Okay, I think that today compliance and legal are extremely complicated, and it is getting worse and worse and worse and worse on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I think that another reason it is the let's say the cost of resources. So here, an average salary for a sales guy that has 15, 20 years of experience, it is around $400,000 per year. And then you have all the regulatory requirements under FINRA. And, so I think there is a lot of things, and we are missing another important thing, that is that here you need to sign all the agreements with any single client to do the distribution. So it is, and this is something that is a big mistake, or a big perception that many managers from Europe has, and it is that because you are approved in the buy list at UBS in Switzerland, you will be able to promote the funds in the US with UBS. and it is not. They are completely different entities. The other thing also to do business here in the US, and is something that I always highlight when I have, a call from a colleague from Europe asking me about the opportunity in the US. It is that here you will also need to have domestic coverage. Okay, it is not mandatory. It is not mandatory, but it helps a lot. So if you are coming from Europe and you have your CCAPs, your UCITS funds in Luxembourg or in Ireland, and you want to do business here, when you go to home office for the big banks, for the big warehouses, so the warehouses here in the US means UBSI, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch. There is no more Wells Fargo, unfortunately. Almost all the FAs moved to Morgan Stanley. So we have now the business at Morgan Stanley, and we can also add Raymond James. Okay, when you go there and you want to sign an agreement with them and you want to add products with them, they will ask you for your domestic version. And the reason is because there is a huge, huge trend here in the US where they are trying to move all the business from their FAs from brokerage to advisory through portfolio models. And the guys that are taking care of the research of the due diligence process and also to build the portfolio models, they are covering both sides of the business, the domestic and the offshore. And and the trillions are on the domestic side. So they will ask you, okay, David, I really like your UCITS fund for your emerging market corporate strategy, but I need also the 40-act version, because if we select your fund, we need to add the fund for both portfolio models, for the domestic and for the offshore. So I think that US offshore is really challenging. And probably that's the reason, because many asset managers, they don't consider to come to the US.
It sounds like it's quite challenging. Clearly, boots on the ground, having somebody physically there. If you're sitting here in London or in Frankfurt or Geneva, it's going to be tough. You've got to be physically there. I mean, when you are looking and reviewing a fund manager, and I know your decision process is very astute. You certainly go into a lot of work with the fund managers before you onboard them. What are the things that you look for when it comes to the decision to go with a fund manager?
Well, I think that so for me as a third party, the first assessment that I do is, why are you using a third party? Why? So explain me why. Why are you choosing Unicorn instead of having your own team? Because I need to understand if a third party is part of the DNA of the asset manager as a growth strategy, if they understand what it means to work with a third party, or we are just a solution based on, let's say, success fee. And if things go well, I will consider to have my own team. Because as you know, the highest risk that has our business is, being too success for the manager, that the manager will consider to have their own team once they have a nice amount of AUM. So, and that's the highest risk.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt on that one, yeah.
and at the end, that means that you have done an amazing job. So it's like, but it's part of the game. So, it's part of the risk, it's part of the game. So we know that, but for me, it's very, very, very important to understand, why are you partnering with Unicorn. So the second thing it is, okay, we need best in class, we need best in breed strategies. And when we represent different asset managers, we are not selling all the strategies for those managers. So we do a best in class selection. And what we offer to the managers, it is not having any overlap between between strategies from different asset managers. So if I'm selling, you know, a global fixed income, but that's actually that is not the best example, because the global fixed income unconstrained category is very tricky, you know, because you can have different, so under the same Morningstar category, you can have different and completely ways of manage the portfolio. One can be investment grade, the other can go to high yield, but at the end it's a global unconstrained strategy, and you have two managers with two global fixed income unconstrained strategies. Is challenging, but what we offer is not having overlap between strategies. So we need to be sure that the manager has very good top strategies. The third reason, it is, okay, marketing. So how are going to be your commitment with the region in terms of marketing support, in terms of PMs coverage, PMs visits, etc. So, and obviously today we need to find something that it will help us for having the agreements in place. And today I think that ESG is something that it helps. It's something that it helps. So, and also, but that's tricky, because what I'm going to say is, okay, I want to have a unique strategy, because everyone is asking for, okay, I want something unique, but from my perspective, this is not true. So it's very easy to say that I want something very niche, very unique, but at the end, they also want to have, you know, the plain vanilla strategies, you know, the usual strategies.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about the marketing. I think fact sheet to fact sheet, if you've got nothing in between, you've got nothing to say, and it's, you've really got to drive some fund managers to provide content, something for you to go and talk about. I think we sometimes think that, well, isn't the fact sheet enough, or a quarterly newsletter? And it's like, no, you need to have other information. I think it's really important. I mean, in that vein, what's selling down in South America and the US offshore at the moment? What's hot, and maybe what's not? What's gone off the boil at the moment? You touch on ESG there, that clearly is hot. Are there any particular asset classes that you think are working at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm talking about retail business, okay? I'm not talking about institutional endowments and the other stuff. No, I'm pure retail business. I think that the multi-asset, you know, the balance fund is probably is the top sales strategy. Obviously, today, alternatives, they are asking for alternatives. But if we talk about pure long-only mutual funds, global fixed income unconstrained, global equity balance funds, that's the three probably main strategies.
Interesting. It's interesting how you talk about balance fund, because that's I've heard that before, but certainly in your part of the world, balance funds here in Europe, not a big seller. It's interesting how there's that.
It's a multi-asset. Yeah, because the thing here is that the business is completely different. You know, if you go to Europe, you know, there is an investment process, there is a due diligence process, there is, you know, as an asset allocation portfolio model construction. So if you go with a balance, it doesn't make any sense. It's the same that if you go with a global fixed income and constrained fund, it doesn't make sense because you are building the portfolio. But here, what your business is the financial advisors, and they have their I think that we need to split the business on the retail side between brokerage and advisory. Okay. Yeah, and DPM and discretionary portfolio management. So if you go to brokerage here in the US, remember that you have a lot of former bond traders of emerging markets bonds, and and they take their own decisions. They have their own team. So if you go to Morgan Stanley, if you go to UBS, and you are visiting different teams in the same day, they will have different views. They will take different decisions, and probably one team is bullish in emerging markets corporates, and the other is looking for a completely different view. The home office are helping a lot, doing a lot of marketing material in terms of house views, CIO models, playbooks, etc. What they want is to help the financial advisors to have like a house view, okay? But it's completely different. So here you have two different animals. You have the financial advisors from the warehouses, and then you have the investment counselors and private bankers from big banks. So if you go to JP Morgan, if you go to Citi Private Banking, if you go to Santander, if you go to Julius Baer, you will see that they act very similar to Europe. It is the same. It's a global dynamic. It's a global process. But here, if you go to the top teams at UBS, Morgan Stanley, you are doing a one-on-one approach. So, and they are taking decisions for their allocation and strategies as global fixed income and global equity and balanced funds or multi-assets. It helps a lot because at the end what they're doing is they're putting the money to work under those funds.
Yeah, sure. But just going back on something you said earlier on, and we're talking about commitment from a fund manager coming over. Someone coming from London or Frankfurt, how often would you want to see a PM in the region? Once a year, twice a year?
Well,
I mean, Zoom obviously makes life easier. We can do virtual stuff these days, but physically being in the region?
Yeah, but here, so I think that there is two important moments. One is when you are trying to have this strategy approved, and the other one is when you have already this strategy approved. Okay, so I think that at the beginning you need to come to the region with the PM of your top strategies twice per year, and at the same time that you're coming to the region with a PM. I think that it makes sense to make it coincident with top events as Citywire or others. Once you have the strategy approved, and again, here is very important. It is completely different. How do you do the delivery on the private wealth? The private wealth for me means the pure retail business, or with the advisory DPM global banks. So just to understand, I have two different teams. Right. Two teams. Okay. So I have one team that they cover private wealth.
Mhm.
I have another team that they cover home office DPM, because the delivery is completely different. It's completely different. So for the advisory, for the global bank, for the DPM, so if you have one strategy, that is, because always you are going to have two strategies, that is going to be 80% of your business, and this is always happen. And so for the top strategies, I think that 2-3 times per year is something that makes sense.
Okay. And when it comes to launching a fund, what's the minimum size of the fund that needs to be? Are you happy to have a fund which has got no assets and you go out and try and raise the assets, or do you want to see an investment manager back their own horse basically by putting some seed in? Tough one. It's a tough one, I know.
Yeah, but no. What I want to be is realistic. I'm here. I've been doing this from scratch during the last 5 years with different managers. So the last manager that we signed, it was like 8 months ago. So we know very well how is working the business here. And unfortunately, Stuart, is getting very, 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 very difficult. So you are top, and this is something that many times they call me from Europe, no, especially from Europe. Okay, so we have already 6 billions. We've been very success here. We are a former team from, so we are a team that we've been working together for 15 years. We left our previous company 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and we launched, and you just see, it makes a lot of sense. So you have a unique strategy, 6 billions, probably with a high component of ESG. Okay, so yes, I know that you are a unique boutique strategy, but unfortunately here, they don't want asset managers that has just one strategy or two strategies. So, and as I said, they want to have 40 Act coverage. They want to have, Mercer coverage. They want to have, so the requirements that they're doing here are very, very, very massive. So the first thing that I would do is obviously being included in all funds. I think that all funds is one of the best ways to do business, because it will help you to avoid to sign the agreement with with the client, with the manager. I think that all funds is for us the best solution ever. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you need to add your fund 2%. You need to have your funds in NSCC. You need to know that for doing business here in US, for sure you will to launch newsletter classes with higher trailers. Here we don't have MiFID, so MiFID doesn't exist. Okay, here you need to pay trailers, you need to pay for distribution. So at the end, you can have a very good strategy. Let's say, okay, fixed income strategy with a TR of 1%.
Right. Okay.
This is not going to work here. Okay, it will work for advisory, but for retail business, you need to pay a trailer. The trailer for fixed income is 50 basis points. So, just do the maths.
Yeah.
So, but saying that, if you go to the top names as JP Morgan, Citi Private Banking, Santander, they are much more open to have boutiques into their high conviction focus list. And that is very interesting, because when I talk with guys from research at a GP or a City Private Banking or Santander, they like to have strategies that are very well managed by very good teams, and that they have been able to find that talent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So having that differentiation on that platform. Look, David, I can see that the sun is almost rising in
Almost.
Florida. It's been really good to catch up, and thank you so much for your insight today. I look forward to seeing you. I'm actually in New York in a few weeks' time, and I may pop in and see your office there and check out the quality of the coffee. We'll complete today, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Oh.